Reactive training systems.
So opener was pretty happy with that, actually moved in quite well. So we were kind of proceeding on plan A essentially then in for the second attempt. Again, one of the nicest kind of openers that he's like from his historical on the bench, and it was a little bit heavier than what he'd opened it previously. So, we're kind of trajectorying pretty well at that point.
Yeah. And then we went up to 155, which tied a PR bench and made that one as well.
Yeah, and that one was a bit of work in that. So again, we're saying, okay, if we can chip on just a 2.5 here on this one, then that'll put us PR bench. And just to say at that point, of course, he'd have a PR squat and a PR bench under the belt, which let's just say is for, I think, for any lifter, not a bad kind of place to be kind of operating at.
And kind of a situational context here as well. Like at this point, lots of people are missing lots of lifts, especially third attempts and things like that. It was kind of plain to see the pattern that was going on kind of throughout the whole competition. Did that affect any of your decision making at all? Like, hey, things in general seems like everybody's leaning a little bit aggressive, so maybe we should pull the throttle back a little bit. Does that factor in for you?
Well, it's more, let's just say, regardless of, let's say at that point, you're trying to maximize your subtotal, especially for, a lifter who is a big deadlifter. So it's kind of like you're taking note of that and you're looking for those kind of opportunities that may be presenting. But I wouldn't say that directly is going to make you throttle back in the sense that, let's just say, our strategy is still to try and maximize as much as we possibly can that subtotal. So let's just say that we're already kind of on that vein and we're kind of looking to do that, we'll say. But it's more just that you're kind of trying to highlight opportunities that may be presenting that will kind of factor
Sure.
in with that. So it's kind of, let's just say we're already trying to kind of achieve that goal in, and we're just going to, because we're trajectorying quite well in the prognosis all through into that point as well. So you're kind of
Sure.
keeping an eye just on how that's kind of shaping through. It's almost like you're, suppose, trying to almost kind of get the lay for where that deadlift battle is going to sit and where things are going to be stacked up towards that. Of course, you're also trying to take into account, are the other guys, even if they're missing, is it unexpected misses? Is it stuff that's kind of in or out of their normal range, just to try and get a feel for, let's say, who's cooking on today or who's maybe as expected or who's kind of struggling a little bit. And again, it's mostly just trying to give yourself information for when things do come down to the kind of the joust with the deadlift.
So, and I mean, like going up to is like the only, like it's the highest probability jump that you can make at that point. You've already made 155, and attempting
Yeah.
157 is just, I mean, it's the obvious
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, and I just think that 160 just wasn't there on the day. So it was a case of like, that's our option here. So
Yeah.
it's like, let's try and get that guy on the board. We've got it on the PR level as well. Just thought that, 60 wouldn't have been there. So it was just the only choice you make at that point.
Yeah.
Talking about taking small low jumps and potentially also using that to make adjustments in training in the future. When it comes to Sheffield, like we know that every attempt matters, right? So sometimes we get put in a position where we have to take 2.5 kilo of a jump because, let's say, the lifter, like for example, Oprah in that case, was pretty close to his top end. So we know, okay, 2.5 is the only option we have. In that case, we kind of need to be confident also in the ability that Oprah isn't completely gassed out and can do this 2.5 kilo jump. So talking about small low jumps, I think, Mike, we recently also had a discussion about talking about Sheffield, like that a lifter wants to make the smallest amount of jumps without gassing themselves out, since every attempt matters, right? How important is this to take this into consideration in the future training, like working on work capacity, for example? So we know a lifter can take smaller jumps, maybe even potentially coming up with a different strategy in the future. So taking smaller load jumps than, for example, at Worlds, or is that not that important and we just want to focus on, okay, this is going to be the outcome, the third attempt, and we want to build on that and take even, let's say, like similar load jumps than what the lifter is actually used to?
I would be interested in hearing both of you guys talk about your experiences here as well. I don't think I've had anybody where I've felt like, we're just not in shape enough to take 3 quality attempts. And I tend to think of, like, some people need to take smaller jumps, and I tend to think of that as a hindrance more than a help. Like on my bench press, for example, I noticed that my bench press will move better if I have smaller jumps, and it leads to me warming up heavier. It leads to me opening heavier. But then if you do find yourself having an off day, that's all of a sudden risky territory to be in, just because you have fewer options, and it would be better to me if I could take bigger jumps and still perform just as well, so I suppose it could be a problem, if you go too far the other direction. And I hear people talk about this. Usually heavier weight classes might talk about it with the deadlift. It's only the ability to get like 2 really good deadlift attempts in. So either they open stupid light, or maybe they pass the second attempt even. Like, that's not a super common strategy. I have seen it before. What about you guys? What's your experience been around this?
Sometimes I guess it could factor in as well, just the logistics of that comp as well. If you have a very short session, something along these lines, it could all of a sudden become a bigger factor, we'll say. Actually, Oprah's competition in Malaysia for his last Asians was one of those where it was a 6-person session. So it was like 6 lifters and, just a short break, and it was like lightning. So let's just say those kind of ones, if you're in that situation where it's literally coming super fast, and of course, then that's when the cramping issues came in. So that became something that wasn't ideal in terms of the kind of the time scales as well. So I think I remember in that competition as well, because we had those cramps on the opener, we skipped the second just to give time to calm that down essentially. So he was able to kind of go in there and take in the third. So sometimes, again, it's like one of these variables that can happen in on the day that you're kind of looking at, okay, maybe we do need to adjust the game plan based on, a situation that's kind of emerged in. And again, if you have a super heavyweight lifters in a short flight, then that could be another factor that might kind of play into things as well. And it depends that I suppose with a lifter as well, if you notice that in their training, if they have quite a low capacity, maybe it's something that you got to factor that into the game plan then as well. Of course, you're probably going to be trying to work on that so that it doesn't become a problem on competition day as well. But I guess how well that comes along is going to be a kind of a determiner how you feed into that game plan as well.
I think, Mike, you also spot on when you're talking about heavier weight classes, because with lighter weight classes, it's usually easy also to take smaller jumps, right? With heavyweight classes, I remember at one point you also talked about your own work capacity when it comes to deadlift. I don't think you ever see someone who can deadlift, let's say, 380 to take jumps, or opening with 370, then taking 375 and then 380. That would be wild. But
If it would be,
I don't think I've ever seen that before. So
no.
also at the same time, like, you don't want to play your best cards on the second attempt yet. So overall, I think it really matters to get in really solid third attempts. Also, watching the lifters at Sheffield, since we had a lot of misses, like missed third attempts as well, I think even though those were very consistent lifters overall, you can already kind of predict the risks. Like, what are the chances that they're going to make the third attempt now if they already gassed themselves out on the second attempt? So overall, I think it's
Sure.
mostly predictable, like what's going to happen. So just getting 3 solid attempts in, like building momentum, seems to be the best choice overall. And there's only so much you can do when it comes to work capacity. You're going to be limited if you're in a heavyweight class. And in general, it's probably not really a night and day difference. It's a really good point what you brought up with when you're used to taking small jumps, but you're having a bad day. So it feels like you're kind of running yourself into the ground.
Hey, let me tell you something that I know about you. Your lifting is important to you. It's probably one of your biggest priorities. And for people like us, nothing compares to the feeling that you get when you set a new PR. That feeling of being the best that you've ever been, of doing something that you've never done before. This is what we're all after, and it's also what RTS specializes in. getting you the absolute best program possible so that you can hit new PRs and reach your goals. We call it radically individualized training, and we're really good at it. Whether we need to account for busy schedules or equipment limitations, or precisely turn the dials and get the details of the program just right, we have the tools and the experience to guide your lifting to the next level. To us, coaching is all about leadership, relationship, and creative problem solving. A coach should be poised to help you make tough decisions about training and competing so that you can continually grow in your development. And of course, a coach should be a first-rate problem solver, especially when it comes to your training, technique, and strategy. Now, all this has to be built off of a really strong, professional coaching relationship that emphasizes trust and respect. Additionally, RTS coaches are not on an island. We have a strong network of professionals to reach out to, so if you find yourself in need of some specific expertise, say in the realm of nutrition or injury management or sports psychology, there's a deep expertise available there too. For more information, go to store.reactivetrainingsystems.com and click on coaching. That's store.reactivetrainingsystems.com, then click on coaching. Hope to see you on the team soon.